I'm making shanks for a link fly here. I use some fairly soft wire. It's normally used for jewelry. It's pretty easy to straighten, and once it's straight, I got a couple of pieces, 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch each. I need one for the front shank and one for the tail piece. Once that's done, I bend them in the middle, just approximately. It's not important. It doesn't have to be very precise, just a fairly soft bend so that they can fit in the pliers. I put the bend over the peg in the looper pliers, as you can see here, and I pinch the legs of the wire and use the pliers to make a small eye. As you can see, the other one goes in over the peg here, and I pinch the legs and I bend the wire, and this eye is not perfectly straight, but the wire is fairly soft. I can straighten it, just mash it between my fingers and give it an extra round in the pliers here. That works fine. Once that's done, I trim the shanks so that the legs are the same length. Simply snip off the tacks here. That's one. And the other one. Same way, just snip it off. This one's a bit longer, it goes on the hook. So I have a short one and a long one. The short one's for the tail and the long one's for the hook. In order to tie the tail, I mount the short one in the vise. Just the open end here, just pinching it together. It's ready for the thread. And I can now tie basically any tail I want to. This one is going to be a couple of golden pheasant hackles. So all I do is just make a small thread base and trim the tag end of the thread. And I have a GP feather prepared. I tie in the tip here. You'll see this a few times on the way. Simply just catch the tip and stroke back the fibers. They'll be part of the hackle. And once that's done, I just wrap the hackle. It doesn't require great precision or finesse or anything like that. There might be a couple of stray fibers, as you can see. I'll catch them with the final wraps. The stem is fairly thick, so it's a good idea to catch it as close to the fibers as possible. And once it's all there, I can stroke back the fibers and cover them with the thread, and I'm ready to trim the remain of the stem. As you can see, it's pretty thick, but no problem, it compresses quite well under the thread. The next hackle goes in just in front of this one. There's no need for anything in between. The hackles will cover the thread wraps on the shank here. So same procedure, just tie in, stroke back, and wrap the hackle. And catch the stem again. And it's ready to be trimmed. And finally, I simply just form a small head. A few wraps to do that. like the head on any fly, even though this is not the front of the fly. Whip finish, like so. And cut the thread. And the head is ready for some varnish. I use a bodkin here, that's the easiest way in my eyes, and to rotate the vise to distribute the varnish around the hook. It's very easy and quite precise. This is what I always do when I varnish. And once that's done, the varnish can dry a bit, and I can mount the front shank in the tail. And as you'll see, what I get from this is a nice link, and the tail is all ready to be tied in on the hook. So in goes the hook. And I make a thread base for the shank. Just again trim the small snippet here and put the shank on top with the tail, of course, still in it, and just catch it like this. And some really tight wraps will keep it fine. You can varnish or you can glue if you want to, but I think this will be fine. There's no pull on the tail, so everything will be fine here. The wire is pretty soft, so I can straighten the eye a bit if it's not positioned perfectly. And the last few wraps, and we're ready for another GP hackle. Yep, I stroke back the fibers and keep the tip. This is the way I always tie in the GP hackles. It's very easy to do it this way. The stem is pretty thin in the tip of the feather, and fairly thick in the bottom, so going this way around makes it a lot less bulky. So you have the whole thing going here. Another one. And again, catch the stem. And compress it a bit. And trim away the remains. Yep, that one is ready. So let's take another one. Oh, well, let's take some flash first. I tie in a bit of flash just to give a bit of accent to the fly. And we're ready for another GP hackle. Get a hold of the tip here and tie in the tip. You get the idea. Stroke back the fibers. All of them, even this one. And wrap the hackle. And that one is done. Again, pull back the fibers and wrap over the stem. It compresses quite nicely. It's pretty soft, so it doesn't take up much space. And cut off the stem and wrap over the butt so that it disappears completely. Yep. So that's it. couple of hackles in the tail and a couple of hackles in the body with a bit of flash.
And now for something completely different.
It's time for dubbing. Yay! This is musk ox dubbing, but any fine long-haired natural dubbing will do, like Arctic fox or whatever you have, rabbit. What I do is simply just dub it on the thread and make a segment of dubbing to separate the body hackles, because we will have more hackles. As you can see, it doesn't have to be very precise, but just a nice segment, leaving about as much hook shank as you've covered.
Same procedure as last year, Miss Sophie.
The same procedure as every year, James.
And yep, same procedure as last year, or last hackle that is. Tie in by the tip, stroke back, and wrap. And catch the stem, and yada yada yada. Off that goes, and we are ready for some more dubbing. It's really easy to dub this muskox. This stuff was something that I actually picked up from the small trees in Greenland once I was up there, so I have a bunch of it. It's full of little twigs and hairs and all kinds of things, but it's really nice dubbing. Once I get it cleaned, it really does a good job. It's a great color, it's easy to handle. And as you can see, it just does exactly what it's supposed to do, and there's a small fiber. Something from Greenland, but away that goes. Most of it, at least. This one goes too. Yep. And we are almost ready for the final hackle. Oh yeah. I removed the webby stuff, as you can see. Just get away with that. I don't need it. It's in the way when I wrap. And I do the same thing. Grab the tip. Stroke back the fibers in the side. And I can tie in the tip as I've done a few times before. Catch it with the thread. Like that. And again, stroke it back. And wrap the hackle. More botany from Greenland. Okay, the hackle is ready to be wrapped. And finally, we can tie down that. And the fly is almost done. This stem is fairly thick, as you can see, but I can probably get rid of most of it with a good pair of scissors. Away goes this, and that bit there I want to get rid of too, those two stray fibers. And there they go, and this one I will probably just pinch down with my nails and see if I can trim off as much as possible. Good scissors are really great to have here. As you can see, that works quite nicely. And then simply compress the rest with the tying thread, forming a neat head. And finally, a whip finish. And once that's done, I can trim the thread, and the fly is ready for the final varnish. And it's finished. Almost. Off with the thread here. And again, the dubbing needle and the varnish. Again, using the rotation makes it very easy to distribute the varnish all around the head here. A bit on the skinny side for this head, so I'll just add a bit more. Once the first layer is there, the second layer will kind of stick to the first one and not go into the feathers or anything. So as you can see, it's fairly big. It's a bit wet here, so I just rotate the vise while it distributes itself around the head and sets. Once it's semi-dry, it will stay where it is and just dry out. And the fly is ready. Nice, good looking, fairly big, but a really good clamworm imitation or bristleworm or whatever you will call it. Excellent saltwater fly. It's lightweight, it's pretty wiggly. It's not like those really long worm flies you see sometimes, but it's pretty good, and it's a very good imitation of these small red clamworms that are very, very common.